"Sir, my mom didn't wake up," the little girl said. The Alpha King turned pale. "Show me now." Amid the gray, a little girl ran barefoot over damp leaves, clutching a small bundle tightly to her chest. Her face was pale, eyes wide with fear, and every few steps she stumbled, her tiny fingers brushing against the roots and moss. "Mom, wake up," she whispered, her voice trembling. "Please wake up." The little girl's name was Elara, and the bundle in her arms was her mother. The woman's skin was colder than the morning air, and her chest rose only slightly with shallow, uneven breaths. Something was terribly wrong. Elara's small heart pounded, and tears welled in her eyes as the weight of her mother's stillness pressed on her. Through the trees, a castle loomed, dark and grand, its towers rising like stone sentinels against the gray sky. This was the home of King Kalen, the Alpha King, whose power was whispered about in every village, and whose name carried both awe and fear. No one dared approach the castle without his permission, and yet Elara ran toward it, hope and desperation guiding her steps. When she reached the great doors, her small fists knocked frantically. "Please help my mom, she's not waking up," she cried, voice cracking. The guards at the gate froze. They had never seen anyone speak to the Alpha King like this, not even in whispers. "Show her to me," Kalen's voice echoed through the hallways, calm yet commanding, carrying a weight that made every servant and guard straighten immediately. There was no anger in his tone, only sharp authority. But in that single moment, as he walked toward the doors, his face, normally stern and unyielding, went pale. Elara looked up into his piercing eyes, wide and frightened. "Sir, please, I don't know what happened," she whispered. Her tiny body shook as she stepped aside, and the guards helped her carry her mother into the grand hall. The hall was vast, lined with banners of gold and black, and torches flickered against the stone walls, throwing long shadows that seemed to dance with unseen life. Kalen knelt beside the woman, placing a hand over her wrist. His fingers were warm, strong, and yet the pulse he sought was weak, almost non-existent. A chill ran through Kalen's body, one he had not felt in decades. There was a darkness here, a curse perhaps, something unnatural. His sharp eyes scanned the woman's face, and he noted the faint, dark veins beneath her skin, like ink spreading through parchment. This was no ordinary illness. Elara clutched Kalen's sleeve. Will she be okay?" she asked, her small voice trembling. Kalen's chest tightened. He was used to commanding armies, making decisions that affected thousands, yet here, faced with the fragile life of a woman and the terrified hope of a little girl, he felt powerless. "This is not normal," Kalen muttered, standing. His long cloak swirled around him as he moved toward the towering shelves filled with ancient books. The air smelled of old parchment, iron, and a faint trace of something magical. He pulled down a tome bound in black leather, the cover etched with symbols that glimmered faintly even in the dim torchlight. Elara followed him, curiosity mixing with fear. "Sir, do you think it's magic?" she asked softly. Kalen paused, his hand on the book. "Perhaps," he said, his voice low. "Some magic is old, older than anyone living now, dangerous, and not always seen with the eyes." As he opened the tome, pages whispered secrets of spells, curses, and power beyond comprehension. Kalen's mind raced. He had faced enemies, sorcerers, and armies, yet the feeling rising in his chest now was unfamiliar, a mixture of dread, protectiveness, and something he refused to name. The little girl's mother stirred slightly, moaning in a language Kalen did not recognize. His eyes narrowed. It was the language of shadows, of curses and binding magic, long thought forgotten. Kalen had heard it once, many years ago, in a moment that had shaped his life in ways he could barely admit even to himself. "Elara," he said, bending slightly to look into her wide, frightened eyes, "I need you to stay calm. Your mother is in danger, but we will not let anything happen to her. Do you understand?" Elara nodded, though her lips trembled. She had seen kings before in stories, towering men who seemed untouchable, Yet Kaelin's presence was different. It was not just his power, it was the weight of responsibility, the loneliness and something softer that peeked through the cracks. She sensed it, though she did not know what it meant. Kaelin turned back to the woman. He raised his hands, and a faint silver light glimmered at his fingertips. It hovered above her skin, gentle but insistent, probing the dark magic that had attached itself to her. The light pulsed with Kaelin's heartbeat, steady and strong, yet the curse resisted, twisting like smoke, refusing to yield. Hours passed. The torches burned low, and the castle seemed to hold its breath. Alara stayed by her mother's side, holding her hand, whispering words of comfort. She noticed how Kaelin's gaze never left the woman, how his jaw tightened, and how his usual confidence faltered slightly. There was something in the curse that struck deeper than any sword or army he had faced. Finally, Kaelin stepped back, his face shadowed and grim. "This curse, it is older than me," he said. "Older than the throne. It is bound to blood, to life itself. Breaking it will not be simple, and it will be dangerous." Alara swallowed hard. Will she live?" she asked, barely above a whisper. Kaelin looked down at her, eyes softened, and for the first time in many years he allowed a flicker of emotion to show. "She will if we are careful," he said. "But we must act quickly. There are forces at work here, old forces, and they will not wait for us to be ready." That night, Kaelin led them to a hidden chamber beneath the castle, where the walls were lined with ancient artifacts, glowing faintly in the darkness. The air here was warmer, infused with residual magic, as if the stones themselves remembered spells cast long ago. He laid the woman on a stone dais, carefully examining her again. The faint veins under her skin shimmered like shadowed rivers, and Kaelin could sense the pulse of the curse. It was alive, whispering, hungry, and it had a will of its own. Alara knelt beside her mother, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why is this happening? Why her?" Kaelin looked at the girl, his usual hardness replaced with a rare gentleness. "Sometimes, the world holds shadows that touch people for reasons we cannot see, but we will not let this shadow take her without a fight." The little girl nodded, her small hand clutching her mother's. Even in fear, she felt a strange comfort in Kaelin's presence, as though the darkness outside and within the castle could not reach her while he stood guard. Suddenly, the mother stirred again, whispering the same strange language, her eyes flickering open for a brief moment. Kaelin stepped closer, alarmed. The words she spoke were not meant for them. They carried a memory, a warning, and something more. A name, a memory from Kaelin's own past, one he had tried to bury. "Alara," he said sharply, his heart pounding. "Stay back." But Alara did not move. She watched her mother and the king with wide, curious eyes, sensing that something larger than life had begun, something that could change everything. Kaelin's fingers traced the symbols glowing faintly along the edge of the dais, and he realized what must be done. To save this woman, this innocent life, he would need to confront his own past, the shadows he had long ignored and the powers he had tried to control. The night deepened, shadows curling in the corners of the chamber as Kaelin prepared. Outside, the wind howled through the castle, carrying whispers of ancient curses and unseen watchers. Alara pressed closer to her mother, sensing danger, and sensing a strange new bond forming with the king who had stepped into their lives. Kaelin looked down at Alara. "Stay close," he said softly. "I promise I will protect her, but what comes next may test us all." Alara nodded, though fear lingered in her chest. She had no idea what lay ahead, but she knew one thing: she trusted the Alpha King, even as the shadows of the past and present stirred around them. And somewhere deep in the dark forest beyond the castle, a figure watched, silent, patient, waiting for the right moment. The curse was not yet finished. Kaelin felt it too, a prickle along his spine. His eyes narrowed. "Show yourself," he commanded, voice echoing in the chamber, steady and dangerous. But no one answered, only the whispers of magic and shadow, and the distant heartbeat of a danger that had only just begun. The first part of their journey had begun, and already nothing would ever be the same. The castle was quiet as the first gray light of dawn crept through the tall windows, but the hidden chamber below the stone halls remained shrouded in shadows. Torches flickered weakly along the walls, their light struggling against the darkness that clung to every corner. Kalen stood beside the stone dais, his hands hovering over the woman's pale form. Though her chest now rose with a slightly steadier rhythm, the dark veins under her skin seemed to pulse with a life of their own. "Alara," he said, his voice low, "I need you to stay near the doorway. Whatever happens, you must stay safe." The little girl nodded, her small fingers clutching her mother's hand tightly. "I will, sir," she said softly, though fear lingered in her wide eyes. She watched him carefully, sensing that this man, so powerful and commanding, also carried a weight she could not fully understand. Kalen turned his gaze back to the woman. He had spent hours poring over ancient texts, searching for a solution, and he now knew that the curse binding her was not ordinary magic. It was old, very old, woven into bloodlines and souls, a shadow that had lingered far longer than any living memory. Breaking it would require strength, knowledge, and most importantly, courage. He knelt beside her once more, placing a hand gently on her forehead. A faint silver glow emerged from his palm, brushing along her skin, seeking the darkness beneath. The cursed energy resisted, twisting like smoke, yet Kalen's focus did not waver. "Alara," he whispered, "do you see the light?" The girl nodded, though her voice was tiny. "Yes, it's like it's alive." "It is," Kalen said quietly. "Magic like this, it breathes, it feels, it fights, but we can guide it if we remain strong." For hours, the three of them remained in the chamber. Kalen traced ancient runes in the air with his fingers, chanting in the forgotten language of shadows. Alara watched, fascination mingling with worry. Though the words were foreign, there was a rhythm to them, a song of power that made the air itself seem to shimmer. Suddenly, the woman's eyes fluttered open. They were faintly glowing, and for a moment she looked through Kalen and Alara, as if seeing a world that neither could perceive. Her lips moved, whispering words that Kalen recognized immediately, words he had not heard in decades. "Alara, step back," he commanded softly, his hand tightening on the edge of the stone dais. The little girl obeyed, her gaze fixed on her mother and the king. She felt a strange tremor in the air, a power that was neither kind nor cruel, but ancient and knowing. The woman's voice grew stronger, forming words in the old tongue. Kalen's eyes widened as he realized the truth. This curse, this shadow, was tied not only to her life but to something in his own past, something he had tried to bury for many years. "Alara, your mother, she knows me," he whispered to himself, more than to the girl. The realization weighed heavily on his chest. The woman, her memories blurred by the curse, carried fragments of a life he had thought lost forever, a life that held love, betrayal, and a promise he had once made and failed to keep. "Sir, what is happening?" Alara asked, her voice trembling. Kalen's jaw tightened. "The curse, it is older than the kingdom, older than the walls around us. It is tied to blood, to history, and to choices I made long ago. I do not know if we can undo it, but we must try." He rose and moved to a cabinet filled with artifacts and relics, some glowing faintly, others cold and dark as stone. His fingers traced the edges of a small, obsidian mirror, etched with symbols of protection and binding. "This may help," he said, more to himself than anyone else, "but it will not be enough alone." Alara stepped closer, her curiosity stronger than her fear. "Sir, will it hurt her?" Kalen shook his head. "No, it may be frightening, but it will not harm her. Fear is not the same as danger. Remember that." He placed the mirror on the dais beside the woman, and immediately the cursed energy recoiled, twisting and writhing like smoke caught in a windless storm. Kalen's eyes narrowed. The curse was intelligent. It recognized him as an enemy, yet it also seemed curious, almost playful, as if testing him. Hours passed again. The little girl grew tired, her eyes drooping, yet she refused to leave her mother's side. She whispered words of comfort, soft as wind, and Kalen noticed that each whisper seemed to calm the cursed energy slightly. There was a strength in the girl he had not anticipated, a courage born of love, pure and unwavering. "Do you see, Kalen?" The woman's voice croaked, weak but clearer. She is strong, stronger than any of us realized." Kalen felt a pang in his chest. She was right. Alara's bravery was extraordinary. The girl was small, vulnerable, yet her heart held more courage than many grown warriors. And in that moment, he realized something else. He had begun to care for the girl in a way he had never allowed himself to feel for anyone outside the walls of the castle. The sky outside had darkened as clouds gathered. Rain tapped against the windows, a soft, relentless rhythm that echoed in the chamber. Kalen's focus never wavered as he continued his work, guiding the cursed energy toward the obsidian mirror. Each movement required precision, each word had to be perfect. One mistake could destroy the fragile connection keeping the woman alive. Then, suddenly, the mirror pulsed with light and the woman's body shuddered. Her eyes glowed brighter, the shadow within her writhing in response to the power Kalen wielded. The room seemed to hum with energy, vibrating through the stone walls and into the very air around them. "Alara, stay close," Kalen warned, his voice sharp. The little girl did not move. Instead, she pressed her small hand over her mother's, whispering, "It's okay, Mom, I'm here." The cursed energy hesitated, as if unsure how to respond to the girl's courage. Kalen took a deep breath and extended both hands, letting the silver light flow freely. Slowly, painfully, the dark veins under the woman's skin began to fade. But just as relief began to settle, a shadow moved outside the chamber door. Kalen sensed it immediately, a presence that did not belong to the castle, not to the world as he knew it. It was patient, watching, waiting for a moment of weakness. "Alara, behind me," he said, positioning himself between the girl and the unseen threat. The woman, still half-conscious, murmured a warning in her strange language. The shadow seemed to hesitate, then recede, melting into the darkness beyond the chamber. Kalen's eyes narrowed. Whoever or whatever was out there, it knew the chamber, it knew them, and it would not stop until its purpose was fulfilled. "Alara," he said quietly after a long pause, "we are not safe yet. This is only the beginning." The girl looked at him, fear and determination mingling in her eyes. "Then we fight," she whispered. Kalen's lips curved in a rare, fleeting smile. The girl had spirit. Perhaps that spirit, combined with courage and love, could be the key to defeating not only the curse, but the darkness that had haunted him for so long. He turned back to the woman. Though her chest now rose steadily and the worst of the curse had receded, Kalen knew the work was not finished. The shadow of this curse was tied to something far older, far darker than anyone in the kingdom could imagine. As night fell outside, Kalen made a decision. He would venture beyond the castle walls, into the forest where the curse had first taken root. There, in the twisted trees and tangled shadows, he would seek the artifact that could finally free the woman from her bond. "Alara," he said, kneeling to her level, "this will be dangerous. You must stay here with your mother." The girl shook her head, her small fists clenching. "No, sir, I'm coming with you. I want to help." Kalen's eyes softened, and he felt the weight of responsibility deepen. He could not allow it, yet he could not deny her courage. Perhaps, he thought, it was not just he who would need saving in the days to come. The rain outside grew heavier, drumming against the castle like a warning. Somewhere in the distance, a faint whisper floated on the wind, calling Kalen's name. He stiffened, recognizing the voice from a lifetime ago, a reminder of past sins, past love, and the shadows that never truly left. "Alara," he said, his voice steady but quiet, "whatever comes, trust me. We will face it together." The little girl nodded, determination in her eyes, and as Kalen prepared for the journey ahead, the castle seemed to hold its breath. Outside, the storm raged, shadows shifted, and a distant figure watched, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The bond of shadows had begun, and nothing would ever be the same. The forest beyond the castle was alive with whispers. Trees twisted skyward like dark fingers, their branches tangled in impossible shapes. Mist clung to the ground, curling around roots and stones, and the air smelled of damp earth and old magic. Kalen walked ahead, his cloak brushing over moss-covered rocks. Ilara's small hand gripped his tightly, her steps careful but determined. Behind them, the little woman, Ilara's mother, moved slowly, leaning on a walking staff Kalen had provided, her eyes still glowing faintly with residual magic. "This forest, it feels different," Ilara whispered, her voice trembling, "like it's alive." Kalen's jaw tightened. "It is," he said quietly. "It remembers every spell, every curse, every secret, and it does not forgive easily." The little girl shivered, though not from cold. Even she could feel the forest watching them, judging them, as if it could see their hearts and intentions. Kalen's hand tightened around hers. Despite the danger, despite the unknown, he could not deny the comfort her presence gave him. Her courage, her innocence, her determination, it stirred something long buried in his chest. Hours passed. Shadows deepened as the sun lowered behind thick clouds and Kalen finally halted. In front of them was a circle of ancient stones, black and jagged, etched with symbols of power. The air hummed, vibrating with magic. This was the place the old texts had described, a site where curses could be bound, broken, or amplified. Kalen knelt, running his fingers over the cold stone. "The artifact we need is here," he said, voice low. "It is guarded not by creatures but by illusions. The forest will test us." Ilara's eyes widened. "Illusions?" she asked. "Yes," Kalen said. "It will show us what we fear most, what we regret. Only by facing it together can we succeed." The first illusion came almost immediately. The mist thickened, and the trees seemed to melt away. Kalen's eyes narrowed as a figure appeared before him, tall and familiar. His chest tightened. It was a woman, his past love, the one he had lost decades ago. Her eyes glowed with anger and sorrow. "Kalen," the illusion whispered, voice soft and haunting. "You abandoned me. You failed me. You cannot save her just as you could not save me." Kalen's fists clenched, but he forced himself to breathe. "I was young," he said, voice steady. "I made mistakes, but I am not the same man now. I will not fail again." The figure laughed softly, the sound echoing through the mist. "Words cannot change the past. And yet perhaps you will face what you must here and now." Suddenly, the illusion shifted. The woman's face morphed into the Mother S and then back to Ilara. Kalen staggered, his heart clenching. The forest twisted reality, showing him fragments of fear and love tangled together. Every shadow seemed to whisper his failures, every leaf reflected his regrets. "Ilara," he said firmly, bending down to her, "do not fear what you see. These illusions, they are not real. We must hold our hearts steady." The little girl nodded, gripping his hand tighter. "I'm not afraid, sir. We're together, together." The words struck Kalen like a chord in his chest. They were together. In that moment, he realized he was not facing this trial alone. Ilara's courage, her steadfast trust, made him stronger, steadier, braver. And for the first time in years, he allowed himself to hope. The illusions continued. They became more personal, more painful. Kalen saw armies defeated, cities burned, and faces he loved twisted in disappointment. But Ilara's hand never left his, her small voice whispering, "We're together. Don't let go." Finally, the mist began to thin. The forest sighed as if recognizing their determination. Before them a small pedestal appeared, and atop it lay a crystal orb, faintly glowing with silver light. The artifact. Kalen approached cautiously, lifting the orb. The instant his fingers touched it, a surge of energy coursed through him and visions flooded his mind, memories of failure, loss, and regret, but also hope, love, and strength. He steadied himself, focusing on the present, on Alara, on the mother whose life depended on him. The orb pulsed, and a shadow erupted from the ground. A dark figure made of smoke and teeth lunged at them. Kaelin stepped in front of the girl and her mother, drawing a blade that shimmered with silver light. The shadow hissed, a sound like wind through stone, and struck at him. Kaelin moved with precision, deflecting the blow, and the shadow recoiled. He knew it would not stop until the curse was fully broken. The fight was not just physical, it was emotional, spiritual. Each strike reminded him of every mistake he had made, every failure he had endured, every heart he had failed to protect. "Alara, stay close," he shouted. The little girl did not move back. Instead, she raised her small hands, and a faint glow emanated from her chest. The courage she had nurtured, the love she had for her mother, and the trust she placed in Kaelin. The light expanded, pushing the shadow back. Kaelin's eyes softened as he saw her bravery. "You are stronger than you know," he whispered. The shadow shrieked and twisted, then finally dissolved into the mist. Kaelin exhaled, lowering his blade. The forest seemed to hold its breath, then released a long, quiet sigh. The orb pulsed gently in his hands, a reminder that their trial was not over, but the first battle had been won. They continued through the forest, moving slowly toward the next destination. The woman's strength was returning, though her eyes still held the faint glow of the curse. She spoke little, but when she did, her words were fragmented, memories surfacing in pieces. "Alara, you strong like light," she whispered one evening as they camped beneath the twisted trees. "Protect your heart." The little girl nodded, her head resting against her mother's shoulder. Kaelin watched silently. Each word, each gesture reminded him of what he was fighting for, not just life, but love, trust, and redemption. That night, Kaelin sat outside the small campfire, staring into the flames. Memories of his past love, his failures, and the choices that had hardened him resurfaced. Yet for the first time, he did not feel despair. Instead, he felt determination, strengthened by the little girl's courage and the faint hope that the mother could be saved. "Alara," he said softly, "you must understand, magic like this does not yield easily. It tests hearts, not just strength." The girl looked up at him, eyes wide. "I understand, sir, and I will help, I promise." Kaelin nodded. Her promise was a light in the darkness, a reminder that even the smallest heart could shine brighter than the deepest shadow. The next morning the forest changed. The mist thickened and the shadows moved in unfamiliar ways. Kaelin led them carefully, every sense alert. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shifted and the trees seemed to close in. They were no longer walking in a simple forest. They had entered the heart of the curse, where reality bent and twisted. Illusions returned, more vivid, more painful. Kaelin saw visions of failure, faces of those he had loved and lost, battles he had fought, and moments when he had been powerless. His chest ached, but he forced himself to focus, keeping one hand on the orb and the other on Alara. The little girl's voice pierced the illusions. "We are together, we are strong." Her words cut through the shadows like sunlight breaking through clouds. The illusions faltered, shrinking away from the courage and love that radiated from her. Kaelin felt a surge of pride and hope. Together, they could overcome this. Together, they could face the darkness. Finally, they reached a clearing, and at its center, a black pool shimmered with the reflection of the stormy sky. This was the source, the heart of the curse. Kaelin approached cautiously, holding the orb. The woman's eyes glowed faintly and she whispered, "It is time." Kaelin nodded. "Stay close, both of you. Whatever happens, trust each other." He raised the orb and the silver light spread, touching the edges of the pool. Shadows writhed and hissed, attempting to resist, but the combined courage of the three of them, Kaelin, Alara, and her mother, held steady. The pool began to shimmer, the darkness pulling away from the edges, shrinking, weakening. But just as they thought victory was near, a new figure emerged from the shadows, tall, dark, and watching. The air grew cold and Kaelin's pulse quickened. This presence was powerful, intelligent, patient, a force that had waited for this exact moment. Kalen's eyes narrowed. "It knows we are here," he whispered. Alara clutched his hand. "Sir, what is it?" Kalen did not answer. Instead, he positioned himself in front of them, ready to face whatever this new threat would bring. The forest held its breath, and for the first time, Kalen realized that the real challenge had only just begun. The orb pulsed in his hands, silver light clashing with the growing shadow. They had fought illusions and shadows, but this was different. This was intelligence, patience, and malice combined. "Alara, stay close. Trust me," Kalen said, his voice calm but firm. The little girl nodded, and as the shadows began to move, twisting toward them, Kalen felt a strange sense of calm. Together, they could face anything. The bond they had formed, the courage, trust, and love, was stronger than any darkness that waited in the forest. The heart of the curse awaited, and so did the shadows beyond it. The storm above the forest raged, dark clouds swirling like shadows of memory. Lightning flashed, illuminating the twisted branches and the black pool at the heart of the clearing. The silver orb pulsed in Kalen's hands, a steady heartbeat against the chaos surrounding them. Alara's small hand gripped his arm, and her mother, leaning on her staff, watched the pool warily, the faint glow in her eyes fading as the curse began to respond to their presence. Kalen took a deep breath. The shadows that had crept around them for days now coalesced into a figure, taller and darker than any he had seen before. Its form was human, yet impossible, shifting, smoke-like, and menacing. It moved with intelligence, circling the pool as though studying them. "This is it," Kalen whispered, his jaw tight. "The source of the curse. It is bound to the pool in our hearts. We must break it together." Alara's voice was steady. "We can do it, sir. We are together." Kalen's gaze softened. She had grown so much, her courage shining like a beacon in the storm. He knew that their success depended not only on power but on trust and love, the bond they had formed over trials, fear, and hope. He lifted the orb higher. Silver light spilled over the pool, pushing against the darkness. The shadow recoiled, hissing like wind through jagged stones. It lunged, faster than Kalen expected, and he swung the orb to block it. The light clashed with the darkness, sparks scattering across the mist. "Alara, focus," he shouted. The little girl raised her hands, summoning the light she had discovered within herself. It was not magic, not in the way Kalen knew, but the courage, trust, and love she carried was a force in itself. The glow expanded, meeting Kalen's silver light, forming a shield that pushed back the shadow. The woman stirred, her voice weak but steady. "Together, heart and courage must guide the light," she whispered. Her hand hovered over the orb, and Kalen understood. Her strength, though diminished, could amplify the light. They moved as one, Kalen directing, Alara pouring her courage into the orb, and the mother lending her waning strength. The shadow shrieked, twisting violently, yet it could not penetrate the bond holding them together. "You will not win," Kalen growled, his voice strong despite exhaustion. "We are stronger than your darkness." The figure surged forward, clawing at the orb, but Kalen's grip did not falter. He could feel the shadows inside him too, the mistakes, the losses, the years of solitude. But he pushed them aside, focusing only on the life before him, the little girl, her mother, and the possibility of redemption. Suddenly, the orb's light flared, blinding and pure. The shadow screamed and recoiled, then began to dissolve, pulled into the pool it had guarded for centuries. The black water churned, bubbling and writhing, and then, with a final hiss, the darkness vanished entirely. Kalen lowered the orb, breathing heavily. The storm above began to break, lightning fading, rain softening to a gentle drizzle. The mist lifted, revealing the forest in pale dawn light. The clearing, once filled with shadows and menace, now seemed almost peaceful. "Alara," Kalen said softly, kneeling beside the girl. "You were incredible." The little girl smiled, exhausted but proud. "We did it together," she whispered. Her mother stirred fully, blinking against the morning light. The veins that had marked the curse faded, leaving her skin smooth and warm once more. She sat up, her hands trembling slightly as she touched Alara's face. "My brave little one," she said, voice full of emotion. "You saved me." Kalen felt a wave of relief and something else, a warmth he had not allowed himself in years. He watched the reunion, the bond between mother and daughter, and realized that redemption was not just about defeating darkness. It was about hearts reconnecting, courage shining, and trust enduring. "Thank you," the woman said softly, turning to Kalen, "for everything. For not giving up, for protecting us." Kalen inclined his head. "It was never just me," he said. "All of us together made it possible." For a long moment they were silent, letting the calm wash over them. The forest, once menacing, now seemed alive with quiet magic, whispering of renewal and hope. Kalen finally allowed himself to relax, leaning against a stone as exhaustion settled over him. "Alara," he said after a pause, "you have grown so much. Stronger than anyone I have ever known, and brave, more brave than I imagined possible." The girl smiled shyly. "I had you, sir, and Mom. I wasn't alone." Kalen's chest tightened. He realized then that this journey had changed him, not just as a king or warrior, but as a man. He had faced not only the shadows outside, but the ones within, and he had survived. Not just survived, but learned to trust, to care, and to allow himself to hope again. The mother stood, helping Alara to her feet. "Kalen," she said, "you have not only saved me, you have shown us what true courage is." Kalen nodded, but his thoughts drifted. The curse had been defeated, yet the shadow of the past lingered. He knew that power, love, and duty were never without consequence. He had faced what he feared most, the pain of failure, the weight of choices, and the echoes of lost love, and now he carried the lessons forward. "Alara," he said quietly, "never forget this. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is standing strong even when fear is all you feel." The little girl nodded solemnly, her small hand finding his. "I'll remember, sir, always." The morning light grew stronger, piercing the forest canopy. Birds sang again, timid at first, then louder as the forest seemed to awaken. The storm clouds broke fully, revealing pale sunlight. Kalen looked at the sky and felt the weight of darkness lifting, not only from the forest but from his own heart. "Now," Kalen said, turning to the mother, "we return to the castle. The kingdom will need you both safe, and the darkness that lingered here will no longer threaten our lands." The mother smiled, a warmth that had been absent for too long. "Lead the way, Alpha King," she said, her tone light yet respectful. "We are ready." Kalen allowed himself a faint smile. It was the first in years, unburdened by war, fear, or shadow. Alara skipped beside him, full of life and hope, and the woman followed, steady and healed. Together they walked through the forest, sunlight illuminating their path. Yet Kalen remained vigilant. The forest had taught him lessons he would never forget. Shadows could return, tests could come again, and courage was always required. But now he knew the light of hope and love could match any darkness. As they reached the edge of the trees, the castle came into view, its towers shining in the new morning. Guards and servants rushed to greet them, astonished to see the trio alive, safe, and triumphant. News of the curse's defeat would spread quickly, yet Kalen's mind was already on the future, the protection of his kingdom, the guidance of the little girl, and the promise of redemption he now carried in his heart. "Alara," he said gently, kneeling one last time, "you have changed everything. You have shown me that even the smallest light can banish the deepest darkness." The girl looked up at him, her eyes bright. "We did it together, sir, all of us." Kalen nodded, finally letting the tension in his shoulders release. For the first time in years he felt whole, not complete, not without challenges, but alive and capable of hope. He had faced shadows, illusions, fear, and regret, and survived. The woman joined them, placing a hand on Kalen's shoulder. "Your courage saved us all," she said. "And your heart, well, it has taught us something even more powerful." Kalen looked at them both, Elira, so small yet unyielding, and the woman her life restored. He realized that power alone was nothing without heart. Leadership was not measured in fear or control, but in trust, protection, and love. The sun climbed higher, bathing the castle in gold. The forest behind them seemed alive, whispering secrets of the past, but also songs of renewal and hope. The shadows had been vanquished, the curse broken, and the bond of trust, courage, and love now stronger than ever. Kalen stood, lifting his gaze to the horizon. The future awaited, uncertain and full of challenges, yet brighter than it had been in decades. He had learned the lessons of the shadows, faced the darkness within, and emerged stronger, not just as an alpha king, but as a protector, a mentor, and perhaps, in time, as a man capable of love once more. "Ilara," he said softly, "this is only the beginning. Together we can face anything." She smiled, her small hand slipping into his. "I know, sir, I'm ready." And as the three of them walked toward the castle, the first true light of dawn washed over the land, golden and warm, promising that even in a world of shadows and curses, courage, trust, and love could always bring redemption.